The moment I realized just how precarious my position was came unexpectedly, underscored by a single, deliberate keystroke that erased months of critical data, a move that should have shattered my world, but instead crystallized my resolve. I'm Kyle York, 30 years old, and for the past 8 years, I've been the silent backbone of York Tech Solutions, the senior client systems manager nobody notices until something breaks. In a company pulling in $5 million annually from over 1,200 clients, my proprietary client tracking database isn't just software, it's the core lifeline. I built the architecture from scratch, coded every line, embedded every fail-safe and kill switch that protects us from catastrophic data loss or breaches. No one else has my level of access or understanding, not Damon, not anyone else in the company. I manage the entire ecosystem of client data security, workflow automation, and reporting tools crucial to sales and retention. Last quarter alone, I led an upgrade that boosted client onboarding efficiency by 23%, saving us roughly $350,000 annually. Yet, despite all this, Damon Cook, the acting COO and my business partner, regards me as a bureaucratic hurdle rather than an asset. Our relationship is a fragile balance of professional facade and underlying tension. Damon's obsession with rapid financial gain often conflicts with my methodical approach to system integrity. He pushes for shortcuts while I insist on stability. I remember our last board meeting where Damon casually dismissed my concerns about system vulnerabilities, telling me, "Kyle, your data silos are cluttering progress." The words stung less because of their content and more because of the cold, strategic contempt in his voice. I keep my head down, knowing my knowledge makes me indispensable, and a threat he's calculated to neutralize if necessary. Every day I walk a tightrope between invisible indispensability and the looming risk of being cut loose for his gain. York Tech wasn't always this tense. When Damon and I partnered 5 years ago, the synergy felt genuine. Damon excelled at operations and finances. I managed client systems and infrastructure. Initially, our combined talents propelled rapid growth, but as Damon's ambition shifted toward aggressive expansion and questionable financial maneuvers, the partnership frayed. I remember a heated exchange over budget reallocations. Damon approved a substantial diversion to an opaque market development fund without consulting me or anyone else. His dismissive tone and evasiveness set off internal alarms, but I rationalized it as typical Q4 stress. Then there was the unexplained holdup of my system upgrade proposals, critical improvements delayed indefinitely under vague pretexts. Strategy meetings became battlegrounds where my technical input was marginalized, overshadowed by Damon's relentless focus on short-term profit. The company culture mirrored this dysfunction, rapid growth at the expense of transparency and rigorous oversight. I stayed tethered to the technical work, unaware that Damon was quietly orchestrating side deals and diverting resources, the early signs of a brewing storm I had yet to recognize. My commitment to York Tech runs deeper than just the technology. The proprietary client tracking database I designed is not just code. It's a fortress built on years of meticulous work, a system no one else understands, let alone can maintain. I never documented the architecture fully, adhering to company policy and security concerns, which means if I'm gone, the system risks collapse. Among its hidden features is a kill switch I embedded, a silent safeguard that can freeze client data processing or revoke system access instantly in critical situations. This control point is known only to me, a strategic lever I've never needed to pull, but keep close to my chest. Beyond the system, 3 of York Tech's 5 largest clients, generating $1.9 million annually, came through my personal relationships and trust I cultivated over years. Damon's network pales in comparison here. I am not just the system architect, I am the gatekeeper of our most lucrative contracts. Alongside me stand key allies like Emily Carter, our HR director, who respects my professionalism, and Mark Benson, the corporate lawyer, cautiously aligned but aware of the underlying tensions. Damon, blinded by confidence in the company's bureaucracy, grossly underestimates the depth of my control and influence hidden beneath the surface. The first public fracture came during a quarterly review meeting. Seated among 32 colleagues, I was prepared for routine scrutiny when Damon launched his calculated attack. In a cold, dismissive tone, he labeled my client data system cluttered and outdated, undermining months of painstaking work. Then, without warning, he executed a command that deleted 18 months' worth of client update logs and project status reports. $750,000 worth of billable work vanished instantly. The room fell into stunned silence. Emily Carter and several team leads exchanged glances, their shock barely concealed. Damon justified the destruction as a system cleanup, claiming my backlog was an obstacle to efficiency. I stayed composed, instinctively recording the incident and immediately emailing HR with a detailed report outlining the deletion and its financial impact. Despite the blatant misconduct, HR deferred to Damon's authority, urging me to move forward. The professional humiliation stung deeply, but I masked it with measured resolve. Part of me questioned the justification, but I told myself it was a misstep under operational pressure, not yet a signal of malice. This moment planted a seed of doubt, but I was still anchored in logic, unwilling to concede defeat or suspect deeper sabotage. The backlash was swift and surgical. Damon's response to my silent resistance was to dismantle the very framework I controlled. Within days, the client services team underwent a radical reorganization. He assigned junior staff, technicians unfamiliar with the intricate architecture of my proprietary database, to manage critical accounts. These replacements lacked the nuanced understanding needed to navigate the system's complexity, their mistakes compounding the damage Damon intended to inflict. I watched as my oversight, once the backbone of client operations, was systematically undermined. The deletion of the logs became a pretext. Damon spread whispers that it was my negligence that caused the data loss. Rumors circulated, quiet, insidious, that my competence was slipping, that the architecture I built had become a liability. Even allies I once counted on began to distance themselves, subtle but unmistakable shifts in behavior betraying Damon's influence. I noticed Emily's polite but increasingly sparse responses, the avoidance in meetings from key team members who once sought my guidance. Damon's overreach wasn't limited to personnel. He initiated a new financial control policy that severely curtailed my authority over system expenditures, particularly the budgets crucial to maintaining and upgrading the client tracking platform. The policy mandated approvals through layers of bureaucracy designed to bypass my expertise and autonomy. I received the formal documentation by email, its language dry but intentionally restrictive. The move was blatant. Damon was consolidating power and neutralizing my role under the guise of corporate governance. I documented everything meticulously. Email chains, meeting minutes, memos, each piece a thread in the tapestry of his encroachment. Despite the mounting pressure, I adhered strictly to protocol, refusing to engage in emotional confrontations or reactive outbursts. Every action I took was calculated, doubling down on evidence collection. I knew that to fight effectively, I had to maintain a clear record, a legal and procedural firewall against Damon's escalating assaults. He was building a narrative portraying me as an obstacle to growth, setting the stage for more aggressive maneuvers ahead. I was aware that the internal politics favored Damon. His network within the company was broader and more embedded than I realized, leveraging threats of demotions and job losses to silence dissent. The flying monkeys were activated, mid-level managers who parroted Damon's narrative, questioning my decisions and undermining my credibility in conversations I wasn't even part of. I sensed the growing isolation, but refused to let it destabilize my focus. Each day I arrived early, logged every interaction, and maintained an unbroken chain of communication that would withstand scrutiny. The tension in the office was a palpable undercurrent. Quiet conversations ceased when I entered the room, eyes averted or fixed on screens as if I were a ghost haunting the halls. Damon's strategy was clear: isolate, discredit, and eventually remove the threat. But I was not yet a defeated player. My response was cold, methodical resistance, a patient accumulation of data and facts to counter his gaslighting and maneuvering. The war had entered a new phase, and I was preparing for the inevitable escalation. That morning I scheduled a meeting with Emily Carter and a few board members, my last attempt at resolving this internally before formal legal steps. I arrived with a dossier thick enough to serve as a weapon: email chains documenting Damon's unauthorized deletion of data, records of budget reallocations that violated our partnership agreement, and detailed financial impact analyses showing the cost of his interference. The meeting room was sterile, fluorescent lights casting a clinical glow over faces I had once trusted. I laid out the evidence succinctly, my tone neutral but firm, emphasizing the breach of fiduciary duty and the tangible damage to the company's bottom line. Emily listened, her expression unreadable, while the board members exchanged curt nods. I could feel the room's atmosphere shift. Beneath the veneer of professionalism, lines were being drawn. One board member, with a subtle smirk, dismissed my claims as internal disagreements and management prerogative, phrases designed to deflate the severity of the accusations. It was clear Damon's influence had seeped into their ranks. His allies protected him with an unspoken loyalty that overrode objective assessment. The HR department's response was equally disheartening. Their official stance framed the conflict as a personality clash, urging mediation and suggesting I adapt rather than confront. I realized then that the internal system was compromised, that Damon's political ties and family connections within the boardroom insulated him from accountability. It was a calculated fortress built on nepotism and coercion, impervious to rational argument. I left the meeting with a growing resolve, understanding that traditional channels were no longer viable for justice. I resumed my documentation efforts with renewed rigor, expanding the dossier for external consultation. That evening, I contacted Mark Benson, the corporate lawyer, outlining the situation in precise terms. He advised discretion and hinted at legal avenues beyond the company's internal mechanisms. The system I trusted had failed, but I remained methodical, professional, and focused on building an unassailable case. The battle was no longer just internal. It was becoming a strategic game of leverage, evidence, and calculated moves beyond the corporate walls. The next blow was both personal and financial. Damon froze my salary increments, withholding the 12% raise that would have added $14,000 annually to my income. This was not a mere oversight, but a deliberate signal of his control. The raise had been approved months earlier, documented in the HR portal, yet Damon's interference ensured I would not receive it. He also cancelled an approved $40,000 bonus tied to the client system upgrade I had spearheaded, an achievement that boosted efficiency and saved the company hundreds of thousands. The financial strain was immediate and tangible. My plans for home renovations, carefully budgeted over the past year, were abruptly postponed. Conversations with my wife turned from excitement to cautious recalibration as we adjusted to the tightened household finances. Professionally, Damon struck harder. He removed me from client pitches, reassigning my key accounts to newly hired managers with little experience but eager to please. The deals I had cultivated over years were redirected without explanation. Damon's bad faith was blatant. Behind closed doors, I knew he was negotiating side contracts with competitors using YorkTech's confidential client lists, a blatant breach of trust and legality. The injustice unfolded in full view of our colleagues. Some offered sympathetic glances, others kept their distance, wary of becoming collateral damage in Damon's game. I sensed a quiet undercurrent of support, but no open challenge to the status quo. The office atmosphere grew colder, more transactional. I processed the slights and setbacks with clinical detachment, aware that emotional reactions would only undermine my position. Instead, I catalogued every denial, every reassignment, and every financial slight with precision. The stakes had escalated dramatically, but my response remained strategic. I considered options outside conventional channels, but refrained from impulsive decisions. My goal was to outmaneuver Damon's aggression with a comprehensive, systemic response, leveraging legal counsel, tightening documentation, and preserving my professional integrity while plotting the next move. In a final attempt to regain control, I drafted a formal letter to the board requesting an urgent meeting with the CEO. The letter was meticulous, detailing financial discrepancies, client communication logs, and clear evidence of Damon's breach of fiduciary duty. I offered a final opportunity for internal resolution, emphasizing the serious legal and financial consequences of continued obstruction. The tone was firm but professional, underscoring my preference for a constructive solution over protracted conflict. The board scheduled a hearing, signaling procedural acknowledgement, but the response from Damon was immediate and hostile. He escalated retaliation, excluding me from critical meetings and amplifying internal pressure through veiled threats and increased surveillance. His cold rejection of any reconciliation attempt was unmistakable. No room remained for dialogue or compromise. The board sided with Damon once more, their decision a stark confirmation that the official channels were closed to me. The message was clear. My efforts within the established framework had reached their limit. Exhaustion crept in, yet beneath it, a hardened resolve. I understood then that if the rules and structures designed to protect justice refused to serve their purpose, I would need to pursue another path. The fight was far from over, but my approach would shift beyond the conventional, calculated, deliberate, and uncompromising. I was not defeated, I was recalibrating, and in that recalibration lay the seeds of my next move. The day Damon relegated me to consultant status felt like a calculated surgical strike. The official email was clinical, no decision-making authority, stripped of all system administrative privileges, in accordance with updated security protocols. The phrase itself was a thin veil masking a deliberate power grab. Suddenly, my once expansive corner office was swapped for a cramped, windowless room barely large enough for a desk and a single chair. The hum of the air conditioner was the only companion in that prison of isolation. Colleagues who once greeted me with nods or occasional conversations now sidestepped my path, their eyes darting away as if fearing contamination by association. The subtle social shunning was Damon's invisible weapon, enough to erode my network and morale without raising alarms. Rumors spread, their tone carefully manufactured by Damon's influence. Kyle's leadership is inadequate. He's out of touch with current needs. Risk to client relationships. None of it matched the data, the documented results. But perception was currency, and Damon controlled the market. That afternoon, word arrived that my upcoming performance review was being expedited, an acid test disguised as due diligence. The review cited inconsistent leadership and failure to collaborate, terms that felt like blunt instruments rather than clinical evaluations. Financially, the blow was tangible. My pending bonus was suspended indefinitely. Benefits were frozen. The raise I'd earned, documented months prior, vanished in the freeze. My household budget became a line item in Damon's campaign to destabilize me. Yet, I remained composed. Beneath the surface, my mind sharpened. Each demotion, each slight was a predictable variable in an equation Damon underestimated I had already solved. They presented the illusion of collapse, but I recognized the pattern, the calculated low point before a counterattack. My control over the proprietary client tracking system remained, though under siege, and I began finalizing contingency protocols. I mapped every line of code, noting vulnerabilities and redundancies. I archived every email, every financial transaction suspiciously altered or withheld. This wasn't defeat, it was the quiet before the storm. As the office grew colder, my analysis grew colder still. Friday's delivery felt like the final hammer. The termination letter arrived without warning, brief, detached, and brutal. Due to company restructuring, it claimed, my role was terminated effective immediately. The document went further. My 35% equity stake was recalculated to zero, diluted away by phantom share issuances Damon had orchestrated behind closed doors. I reread the lines, each word sinking into the pit of cold disbelief. The partnership of 8 years, erased in a single stroke. Digging deeper, I uncovered the full extent of Damon's betrayal. He had secretly incorporated a parallel entity, using YorkTech's client lists, proprietary algorithms, and intellectual property as foundational assets. The side company's projected contracts poised to siphon $3.7 million in revenue. The embezzlement was no longer rumor but fact. $850,000 redirected over 18 months through fabricated expenses and phantom vendors. The hostile takeover was no longer a threat. It was underway, cloaked in legal obfuscation and boardroom manipulation. The severance of my operational role, financial stake, and legacy was designed to obliterate my influence and silence resistance. Yet, in that moment, despair did not rise. Instead, a cold clarity emerged. The emotional core briefly faltered, then hardened into resolve. The kill switch embedded within the client tracking system, once a last resort, was now a strategic imperative. The legal avenues once dormant demanded activation. Now I understand the game, I thought, voice steady despite the turmoil. And I know how to win. In the solitude of my dimmed office, I methodically reviewed every asset and document under my control. The proprietary system remained under my sole administrative access, a fortress of code no one else could navigate without me. Contractual clauses I had painstakingly negotiated granted veto power over major financial decisions, a legal lever Damon had overlooked in his rush. I cross-referenced every email, every financial report, hunting for inconsistencies and breaches. Mark Benson's counsel was invaluable. His legal expertise identified multiple contract violations and potential criminal fraud, data points in a growing dossier. I compiled a list of internal allies, those silently disillusioned or actively undermined by Damon's machinations. Emily Carter and Lisa Grant emerged as potential witnesses. Their professional integrity was intact, their testimonies crucial. Regulatory channels, including SEC reporting, became viable as investor deception became evident. I documented every interaction with forensic precision. Timestamps, email headers, financial audit trails. This was no longer a corporate spat. It was a battlefield, and every piece of evidence was a tactical asset. The plan crystallized. Leverage the kill switch to momentarily halt critical client data processing, forcing external audits. Deploy legal claims to trigger internal investigations and regulatory scrutiny, and marshal client loyalty to pressure board members and investors. This multifaceted approach was designed not merely to survive, but to dismantle Damon's grip systematically. Anger simmered beneath the surface, fueling each calculated step. Pain became precision. I was no longer reacting. I was orchestrating. The first step was data preservation. I meticulously exported the entire client tracking database, including transaction logs, access histories, and system alerts. Every byte was encrypted and backed up on drives stored off-site in secure, undisclosed locations. These backups were not merely insurance, they were evidence. Simultaneously, I secured sworn affidavits from 5 former colleagues, their statements detailing first-hand observations of Damon's misconduct. Their willingness to testify was a critical force multiplier, transforming whispers into documented accusations. Legally, I registered the proprietary database's copyright under my name, predating Damon's illicit incorporation of the side company. This move fortified my intellectual property claim and complicated Damon's attempt to leverage the stolen assets. Parallelly, I initiated contact with regulatory bodies, framing the narrative around fiduciary breaches and investor deception. Preliminary interest from a venture capital firm hinted at the possibility of a new startup, potentially reclaiming client trust and market share. In private conversations with my wife, I discussed contingency plans, litigation strategies, public disclosures, and negotiation postures. Her steady presence grounded my tactical mindset, reminding me that this was not just a corporate war, but a battle for restoration. Damon remained oblivious to the invisible arsenal I built quietly. In the sterile halls of York Tech, his confidence was unshaken, unaware that beneath his feet, the foundation was quietly being dismantled. The preparation was invisible but inexorable, each calculated move a step toward reclaiming control. I started by discreetly reaching out to the 3 clients I trusted most, clients whose contracts and loyalty were integral to York Tech's revenue stream and reputation. Over encrypted emails and carefully worded phone calls, I planted subtle reminders about the importance of data integrity and the evolving landscape of client management software. I framed it as a personal initiative. I'm exploring new ventures that prioritize transparency and technical control. I didn't want to alarm them, just make them aware I was still a reliable point of contact. Their responses were cautious, but encouraging. I sensed their skepticism about Damon growing beneath the surface. Simultaneously, I drafted a formal notification to York Tech's board of directors. The letter was precise and unambiguous. If forced out or obstructed, I would pursue all legal remedies available for breach of fiduciary duty and intellectual property theft. It was a calculated warning, designed to stall Damon's momentum and inject uncertainty into his plans. I attached a preliminary dossier summarizing financial irregularities and systemic vulnerabilities. The board's silence following the letter was deafening, yet I interpreted it as a sign my message had landed without immediate rebuttal. To safeguard my professional future beyond York Tech, I secured a consulting contract with a reputable software firm specializing in client infrastructure. This not only provided a financial fallback, but bolstered my credibility as an industry expert independent of York Tech's influence. The contract was crafted with confidentiality clauses and non-compete considerations, ensuring it could coexist with any ongoing legal actions. I was methodical in selecting this firm, prioritizing those with no ties to Damon or York Tech's existing network to avoid conflicts and leaks. Monitoring company financials became a daily ritual. I scrutinized expense reports, client billing cycles, and project timelines, flagging anomalies that aligned with Damon's known manipulations. Client responses were logged meticulously, their guarded but honest feedback serving as an informal barometer of their trust in me versus the company. Damon's silence persisted, his overconfidence masking an unawareness of the strategic perimeter I was constructing. I remained patient, knowing the strike had to be timed perfectly. Premature action would jeopardize the entire operation. Behind my calm exterior was a mind running through contingencies. If Damon countered with legal threats, if the board intervened, if clients defected, each possibility was catalogued, countermeasures devised, and documented with exacting detail. I preserved every email, call log, and document in secure encrypted archives. This was not just preparation, it was the architecture of leverage, a precise and unyielding framework from which to dismantle Damon's control. The final review session was a crucible of precision. I sat with Sarah in the small conference room, the only light coming from the laptop screen flickering over spreadsheets and legal files. "Every piece has to align," I said, scanning the evidence once more. "No gaps, no ambiguity. We can't afford doubt when this goes public." Sarah nodded, her expression firm but supportive. She was my anchor in this process, and her analytical mind matched my own methodical approach. Together, we cross-verified the financial audit trails, matching them against the proprietary system's access logs and client communications. The patterns were glaring. Damon's interference left a digital fingerprint as unmistakable as his signature on the forged contracts. I updated the legal documents, ensuring every claim referenced specific clauses and statutes. Mark Benson's advice echoed, "Precision and professionalism are your shields. Don't let emotion dilute your case." Then Lisa Grant requested a confidential meeting. The timing was perfect. Lisa, a quiet presence in the IT department, had long been wary of Damon's shadowy dealings. When she handed over a USB drive in a secluded hallway, I felt the weight of a game changer. Internal emails, code commit histories, and financial spreadsheets evidenced Damon had manipulated systems to mask his embezzlement. Her testimony was clear. Damon had bribed a mid-level board member, obstructing oversight and enabling months of unchecked fraud. This wasn't just professional misconduct anymore, this was criminal territory. The embezzlement exceeded $1.2 million, cleverly concealed through backdated contracts and phantom vendors. I absorbed this new data into my dossier, meticulously indexing each file and cross-referencing witness statements. The gravity of the revelation accelerated my sense of urgency. Regulatory bodies would have to be informed immediately, and the board's complicity exposed. Damon's confidence, once a fortress, began to show cracks. I observed subtle shifts, increased nervous energy during meetings, more aggressive deflections when questioned, and the rare slip of a defensive glance when Lisa's name surfaced. He remained unaware that his empire was unraveling from the inside, blind to the comprehensive dossier now in my hands. Seizing the moment, I filed a formal lawsuit against Damon and York Tech. The complaint detailed breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and embezzlement, attaching the extensive evidence compiled, including Lisa's whistleblower documents. I coordinated with Mark to ensure the filing was airtight, leaving no room for procedural dismissal. The legal action was precise and strategic, a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer, to initiate immediate consequences. Simultaneously, I activated the system kill switch embedded within the proprietary client tracking database. This was a controlled freeze on all client data processing operations, authorized under partnership agreements that allowed suspension in cases of unauthorized executive actions. The timing was impeccable. Client-facing services were temporarily halted, and automated notifications were sent explaining the service disruption as a necessary legal compliance measure pending review. Clients responded with understanding rather than alarm. My prior discreet communications had preserved their trust. The freeze hit Damon's operations hard. Billing cycles stopped, project workflows stalled, and his revenue streams were immediately impacted. Internally, chaos rippled through YorkTech's leadership, but Damon scrambled fruitlessly to contain the damage, lacking the system access or documentation to counteract the freeze. Throughout, I remained composed, orchestrating each step with clinical precision. No outbursts, no rash reactions, just a steady, professional dismantling of Damon's control through leverage and system authority. Every move was calculated for maximum operational disruption and legal impact, turning the tables on the man who believed he had silenced me. The first phase was complete, but the battle was far from over. The emergency board meeting unfolded in a sterile conference room, lit by harsh fluorescent lights, the air thick with tension. I stood at the front, the weight of the dossier in my hands, a tangible extension of months of preparation. The board members, legal counsel, and Damon himself were there, the room a crucible where truth would either ignite or be extinguished. I began with financial audits. Pages of meticulously cross-referenced figures displayed on the large screen behind me. The embezzlement trail was unmistakable. Fabricated invoices, suspicious vendor payments, and the unmistakable fingerprints left in system logs only I could decipher. Lisa's whistleblower testimony played on loop, her voice steady but resolute, as she outlined Damon's bribery of a board member to cover tracks. The room grew colder with each slide. Damon's face tightened, a mixture of disbelief and desperation. His rehearsed deflections faltered under the weight of overwhelming evidence. "These are discrepancies, not proof," he insisted, voice strained, but his words came too late. The legal counsel interrupted sharply, pointing out contract violations and regulatory breaches clearly documented in my presentation. I watched the subtle shift. The board's collective gaze cooled, the initial solidarity Damon enjoyed eroding into scrutiny. Key clients, present as observers, nodded quietly, their public affirmations of my integrity reinforcing the undeniable truth. Regulatory representatives, discreetly introduced, confirmed they were preparing sanctions, their presence underscoring the gravity of the situation. The power dynamic shifted palpably. I wasn't just defending myself anymore, I was commanding the narrative. When the final slide faded, silence enveloped the room. I laid the control documents on the table, detailing my rights to the proprietary system and veto powers Damon had ignored. The board chairman's nod was slow, but decisive. Damon's suspension from all executive duties was immediate, pending investigation. The community's recognition of the legitimacy of my claims was evident in the subtle but tangible shift in atmosphere. For the first time, the room saw me not as the sidelined partner, but the rightful steward of YorkTech's future. I felt the cold certainty of victory settle, not a triumph of emotion, but of documented, irrefutable fact. The aftermath was a cascade of consequences. Regulatory bodies slapped YorkTech with fines totaling $2.3 million, a financial shockwave that rippled through investor confidence. The stock price plummeted as clients reconsidered their ties, some openly expressing disappointment in the media. Damon, once a commanding presence, was now a professional pariah, blacklisted and barred from any executive role while criminal proceedings advanced. His network of collusion unraveled fast. Several implicated employees resigned quietly or were summarily dismissed. Industry news outlets, previously reticent, published exposés validating the systemic justice I pursued. Watching from a removed vantage, I noted the company's turmoil with clinical detachment, already drafting plans for restructuring and steering YorkTech's recovery. Investor lawsuits clustered like storm clouds, but legal teams I coordinated with assured me YorkTech's survival hinged on transparency and swift accountability. The company's reputation suffered, but my controlled response and the documented evidence positioned me as a stabilizing force rather than a scapegoat. The systemic mechanisms I engaged delivered consequences without personal vendettas. My approach was surgical, focused on dismantling Damon's control while preserving YorkTech's core value. The public narrative shifted from scandal to redemption, led by documented proof and steady leadership. I anticipated many difficult months ahead, but the foundation for rebuilding was laid, anchored by a professional victory grounded in facts. Damon's attempts to regain footing were as predictable as they were futile. He offered a $500,000 settlement to drop charges and avoid further exposure, a desperate gamble I rejected outright. His subsequent veiled threats, thinly disguised in anonymous leaks aimed at sullying my reputation, dissolved swiftly under the scrutiny of clients and partners who remained loyal. Transparency became my shield. Every baseless accusation Damon launched was countered with documented facts and client testimonials. His contrived apology, crafted under legal counsel's advice, carried no weight beyond a thin veneer of regret. Regulatory investigations pressed on without pause, unearthing fresh evidence and tightening the noose around him. Clients, whose trust I prioritized above all, remained steadfast. Some hesitant allies within the industry reached out, their apologies acknowledging past doubts. Their support, though late, reinforced the trajectory of my professional rehabilitation. Damon's isolation deepened, his once sprawling influence reduced to desperate maneuvers and legal entanglements. Attempts to fracture my alliances faltered, the systematic strength of my documented case and client relationships rendering his manipulations impotent. I maintained boundaries with calculated distance, allowing no space for emotional entanglement or distraction. His tactics, once menacing, now echoed hollowly against the armor of transparency and controlled narrative. The final chapter of this corporate conflict was not marked by vengeful triumph but measured resolution. I accepted a director position with a major software consulting firm, leveraging my enhanced reputation, technical expertise, and loyal client base. The offer included a $50,000 signing bonus and performance incentives projecting a 30% salary increase, a tangible acknowledgement of my value. 3 top YorkTech clients transitioned with me, generating $1 million in new revenue streams, a testament to the professional relationships I'd cultivated beyond corporate walls. The legal settlement awarded $1.5 million in compensation and restored my intellectual property rights, safeguarding the core of my work. Industry leaders commended my professionalism, emphasizing strategic acumen over emotional retribution. At home, the stability and success strengthened my relationship with Sarah, our shared resolve a quiet but powerful force. Reflecting on the journey, I recognized that competence, documentation, and system control had been more than technical tools. They were the foundation of justice. Damon remained under investigation, a cautionary example of overreach undone by methodical precision. My victory was measurable, objective, and systemic, a quiet but undeniable shift in the balance of power achieved through calculated strategy rather than impulsive emotion. The future was mine to shape, bounded not by past betrayal but by professional mastery.